And I said to my doctor, physically I'm fine, but there's something going on in my heart that I just don't feel prepared to go back. It was all around the emotional support that we needed for getting back to work.
Look through the cancer filter, the lens. You start prioritizing a lot of things.
It's great to have empathy, but sometimes empathy can be a double-edged sword. When I am coaching some women, we talk about which way it could go and to watch for certain things, like for herself.
It takes a little time to reflect, to prioritize, to find your new equilibrium.
So I coach around reframing it so that it's not back to normal, it's back to performance, a new level of peak performance, whatever that is.
So when you're a working professional woman and you find out you have cancer, the number of questions that go through your head aren't just, am I going to live or die? But am I going to keep my job? Do I want to keep doing this job? Will my job be flexible and work with me through treatment? Should I take leave? Will I have enough money to pay for treatment? Will I have insurance if I do that? The questions are endless. My next guest, Patricia Muir, faced all of those questions when she was a working professional in 2013 diagnosed with cancer. And she answered them, as did I, as do all of you. But we're going to spend this whole interview talking about not just the answer she came up with, but how she actually reinvented herself after cancer to share those answers with everybody else. Patricia, it's so good to have you. Thank you for being here.
Hello, Joelle. It's a pleasure to be with you as well.
Love it. All right. So let's jump in. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your story before we get into the identity crisis?
Okay, the identity crisis. Yes, I've been in running my own business for 3 decades, basically, and I was at the very top of my performance, and my business was doing really well. All of a sudden, I got this feeling that something wasn't right. I went to my doctor, and she thought everything was okay as well, but she sent me for additional tests, of course. And actually, when I met the surgeon said, good on you and good on your doctor. Like, this is something that would not have been found for quite a while. It was just that feeling that the two of us had. Let's follow up on this, right? So that was at I would say, the top of my business and the top of my career. Everything was going really well. And so what happened after that, I went through surgery, of course, and then a short course of radiation therapy. I did not have to have chemo or anything like that. So that was because we had caught it so early. However, the physical part for me was not too bad. You know, it's a little scary not knowing exactly what you're going to experience. But I found that returning to work afterwards, or returning back to doing my business, was a different thing. Physically, I felt good, raring to go. My doctor even said to me, she said, you need time for recovery. And I said, I'm ready to go. Like, I have a business to run, right? So, and I have been doing a little bit of business during my downtime because of the type of business I had. I was able to do things remote. I was also able to make appointments with my clients that they had no idea anything was going on in my life. And so when I started radiation therapy, I was fortunate that I had a really good team that allowed me to get into radiation before the wear and tear through the day would shut the machines down. But when I did get back to work, it was like looking in the mirror. Wasn't that physically I was a different person, but there were some physical things, but no one would have been able to tell what they were. But it was just the feeling. Actually, it was heart in my heart. It was, and I said to my doctor, physically I'm fine, but there's something going on in my heart that I just don't feel prepared to go back. And she said, I told you. So I wasn't willing to take time off, but I was willing to renegotiate my work, make sure that I was looking after myself.
So for you, having been a successful entrepreneur at the apex everything you'd been working for. You described this as an identity crisis, that you looked in the mirror and you didn't know who was looking back. And
Yeah.
what are the unique challenges that you think businesswomen facing cancer have to address that's just different from lots of other people?
Well, there are the typical ones, such as finance. And actually, that affects us a little more because sometimes we do not have the insurance or do not have the employer that has the plan that can keep on, paying you while you have your downtime. But it was more about, especially for me, it was more about I felt like I had been derailed because, of course, in this time and place where women were, like, we had built our careers over several decades, and we knew what the challenges were in building our careers as well. We had to overcome a lot of bias, depending on how far you say got up the ladder or where you were as a consultant, and I was a consultant. The how people look at you as being somewhat of an an authority on what you're talking about. And when something like this hits you, first of all, there's other things that become a priority. And so there is the fear that, am I slipping in taking care of business? And also, when I come back, and this I hear from women, and especially if they go back to a corporate executive boardroom, what's going to be the perception of the people around the room? Are they going to say, can she still do this? And the other, of course, the unfortunate part is some of them say, we knew this would happen if we hired a woman on our board. You know, for some reason, it's only women who have cancer, right? And so, or it's only women who have to take time off for these types of health issues.
That's awful.
It is. I've heard it so many times that, it takes a lot of courage to go back. But then when you get that, that feedback, whether it's verbal or whether it's just how you're involved, included in things in business, they got the feeling that their position was there. However, their continuity was cut, and therefore they might not be there for very long.
Which is crazy because if you think about anyone who has faced cancer or any other serious medical issue and come back, they are strong. They are resilient. They have true grit. All the things that we want in executives and leaders. And we don't need to sideline them.
No.
And as we know, cancer is an equal opportunity attacker. There are plenty of men who also get cancer. And we shouldn't be afraid to say to our work, like, this is happening. It's 1 out of every 2 Americans will get cancer. I don't know what the stats are in Canada. I believe that's where you are. But, it's 1 out of 4 in the world and 1 out of 2 in America. It's commonplace. So how did you find a support system for women like you?
Well, fortunately, we have a great support system. I'm in Ontario, Canada, and we have a great cancer support system. And we have some programs through the hospitals and through local communities where they um, have all sorts of support to bring you back physically well if cancer has affected you that way. Have lots of programs on how to address brain fog and like that. The empathy around it is amazing, and the environment is amazing. They have group uh, programs where, and this is what I found, women do very well when they're together talking about these things. Although it can be sad because you hear some of the stories of the younger women that are going through it, but there's that support. Now, the one area where I thought that there was a gap and it let down women who were executives or business owners, and that was that the return to work program focused more on, like, what are my rights? What will the union stand up for me? all those sort of things for the general population. It was not addressing things that women in executive positions, we know where to go to find our rights, whatever those rights are. And but it was all around the emotional support that we needed for getting back to work.
So you talked about these debilitating challenges, these fears and realities that come up in terms of being sidelined, your career momentum stalling, questions of people keeping your health confidential,
Mhm.
questioning your motivation, your desire, your enthusiasm, your commitment, leading to doubt and
Right.
confidence crises. So, in your opinion, are successful women worse at dealing with cancer because we're used to being in the driver's seat? Or are we just different and need different things?
That's such a great question. I think every woman deals with it in her own way. Yes, some of them feel like everything's just been cut off, right? Other women find it as an opportunity. They have the skills, they have built great careers, so they're either at a point where they want to let go of that career, be their choice. They say, "Is this really for me anymore? Like, I've been on this track for so long. Maybe this is not right for me anymore." And so they do have an advantage where they are curious about what else, what's new for them, what can happen after this. And I believe also they are more introspective. So they're used to taking a problem and sort of dissecting it and looking at where the opportunities are, where the risks are. So they definitely have the skills and the business acumen to use to use all of that to be like something that will launch them into something new. And that's what happened to me. Kept my business, but I made some significant changes in my business. Whereas now, 10, what is it now? It's 12 years later, I'm in a place in my business where I'm much happier where I was before. Much, much
Okay.
happier. I'm working. This is one of the things that we have as well as we're able to, if we want to, decide who we want to work with. Whereas some women who are executives, they don't have that choice. They're working towards their employer's goals, right? So they don't have the same kind of choice. So a woman business owner has that choice. And I think what they go through all their career to build their career, they've got the courage to take a look at how this can change. It doesn't have to be the adrenaline rush that it was before. Doesn't need to be with those particular clients anymore because the client wants you, but it also builds up a little bit of toughness in the woman to say, I'm glad you still want me, but I'm ready to move on to something different. And that's exactly what happened to me.
Well, I think that cancer in my family, which, we have a lot of cancer in my family, I consider it one of life's best filters,
Filter,
right?
that's
You
good.
look through the cancer filter, the lens, and you don't ever want to, but since we don't get a choice, that's the lens that got dropped in front of you. You start prioritizing a lot of things,
Mhm.
right? The don't sweat the small stuff. It's funny. I remember in college, I'm about to move my daughter into college. I remember in college, friends getting annoyed. They said, Joelle, like, you're annoying because you don't get annoyed by all these little things. And I was like, did you hear what you just said? But they're like, well, but they're annoying. These little things are annoying. I said, sure, but like there's small stuff. There's big stuff.
Mhm.
But they hadn't yet had to deal with big stuff because I was only 13 when my mother was diagnosed and then 15 when it came back. I had seen some big stuff. And,
Yeah.
to me, that great filter of, is this important? Is this person important? If the person's important, I'm going to do stuff. Is
Mhm.
this the work I want to do? The thing I want to be studying? Because you realize life is fragile
Mhm.
and it's a gift. And that's the gift of the cancer filter, which is I'm going to exert some choice.
Mhm.
But I do want to go back. One of the things I think is very hard for women is anytime we're emotional at work, whether we are an entrepreneur with clients or an executive, it's considered weakness.
Mhm.
And so it's hard not to get emotional
Mhm.
about facing cancer.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
is, a brush with your own mortality.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm just wondering, when you talk to women about, on the one hand, there's tremendous strength in vulnerability and there's tremendous strength in community, but there are potential downsides
Mhm. Mhm.
for women executives and women entrepreneurs where people say she's an emotional wreck, we can't rely on her. What do you counsel women, because I know you talk to so many,
Mhm.
about how to thread that needle and again take care of themselves, not necessarily take care of everybody else?
Yes. So you just hit on something that's very important, and that is the concept of me first. And it's not a selfish thing of me first, but there's times in our life where it definitely has to be me first. I cannot be working with people who are going to affect my energy, my emotional energy. There were some fragile times where I sat in a boardroom. Fortunately, I was on my own in that boardroom because I said, I don't even know what I'm doing here. So that's the kind of emotional trigger that I had. Like, what am I supposed to do next? I don't know, because everything was so routine with working with some clients that, you know, I was sort of stumped as to where do I go from here? And those were some of the triggers. I wasn't triggered into being openly emotional, but, there were people who could say, well, close friends, that before they even knew what was going on, some of them would just call me and say, haven't heard from you for a couple of weeks. What's going on? So I knew that when I was in front of people, sometimes the mask I was wearing was starting to show some vulnerability. And I just had to watch for triggers. And I know, Joelle, you talk about triggers as well in a different way, but I had to watch for triggers, especially if I heard of other people who were diagnosed with cancer in the workplace. Uh, there's a concept that I talk about. It's great to have empathy, but sometimes empathy can be a double-edged sword. And that could be that you expend a lot of energy with your empathy for someone else when actually you are taking away from yourself as well. So there was things like that I think women executives and business owners, they start to clue into those sort of things. And if they are good at reflection and taking that me time, not me time, but me first time, and thinking about, okay, what triggered that little lump in my throat today? And how can I go back into a client tomorrow and be sure that I'm not affected too much? Because it'll affect my health, right? It'll affect my health if I let it come back to me.
I think it's interesting. And yeah, I talk about happiness tripwires, and I think
Mm.
that's probably triggering a different response.
Yeah, I like
But
tripwires better than triggers.
well, I think they're different things. So it's important. The approach I took, as you know, is I told people I was very open about what was happening, which for me created an opportunity for me to be very clear about what I needed and didn't need. Right. And
Mhm.
so I was able to say, I want to work. It is actually therapeutic for me to work. So let's do this. I will not be available. I was doing chemo on this day of the week. And I'm going to try to do our meetings pre chemo because I don't know how I'll feel post. It turned
Mhm.
out I felt fine post. So I was very lucky and I could start picking up things, the day after chemo. But I was able to set those parameters and let people know what to expect, which actually made them a lot more comfortable relying on me.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think the attempt to hide, to do it all, to not tell, people know something's going on. None of us are
Mhm.
good at wearing that mask, right? So people know something's going on. And you know what the first thing they think? It must be me. I must be doing something and they're uncomfortable or annoyed with me, because we all operate in this world that's very self-centered. So I think it's really important to assess if you do trust the people, your clients or the people you're working with, and can say what you need, share what you know and what you don't. It has been my experience that people given guidelines are fantastic about stepping up and being that welcome distraction that for me, work was an escape from Cancerland. And any off-ramp from Cancerland I could take, that was a good exit.
You've brought up something that it is different for everyone, right?
Sure.
Very different. Even culturally, because you're saying, I believe in expressing boundaries, letting people know what my boundaries are. I was in a type of work where it was all about compliance, and part of that compliance was privacy. So that's part of my mindset. Everything stays private, right? So there are certain people that, yes, you will tell because they need to know, or they are the ones that you trust to be able to um, uh, have your best interests in mind. When you are from outside an organization, or maybe even within the organization, there are people that you're not sure how they're going to take it. Sometimes I know some women talk about, I don't want to tell my coworkers because then they will fuss over me, or they will, think that I'm really ill, right? When no, I'm going through my treatment. Treatment's going well. And the other thing is, they don't want to be asked the questions every day. So, how are you feeling today, right? So you just gave a really good point where where you come from is about sharing and having those expectations out there. For other women is very much about, I need to keep this quiet. Well, not quiet. It's not that way. But for me, it was a needs to know. If you needed to know, I would tell you, right? Because I had one friend tell me that someone else needs to know. And I said, why do they need to know? And she says, because they would like to know. And I said, that's not the same as a needs to know. If I think they need to know, then I will let them know.
So I think it's really important to, if you will, take your own temperature. And, no one is under any obligation to tell anybody anything. What I would suggest is there are many surprising gifts in letting people know if you don't want to be made a fuss out of. I happen to have an allergic reaction to pity, and I did not want to be asked how it was doing, how I was doing, how anything was doing.
Yeah.
So I said, one, I hate pity. I'm fine. I am not going to die from this. This is something I just have to deal with, and I'm going to be fine. Why do I know that? My doctors and my family history with cancer, I know what I'm dealing with. Okay. Number two, I will keep information about how I'm doing in a private place called, oh God, I'm blanking. Caring Bridge. So I will put a Caring Bridge, which is invitation only. And if you're actually curious about how I'm doing, it will always be there.
Yeah.
You never have to ask me, because I know you mean well, but it's exhausting to tell people over and over again. So I ask you, and so again, this is about putting me first, saying, I'm telling you because this is happening in my life and it's probably going to show up in some way in our relationship, and it's not about you. I'm going to be fine. I don't want pity. I appreciate your support. Updates are here. And the way you can help me the most is let's work. Let's do good work.
Yeah.
Right. And, people still will reach out to me and thank me for how clear my direction was, because then they knew how to help me.
That's good. That's good. So the other side of that as well is I may not have sought support from my closer networks, but the post-close ones, yes. But let's say the associate colleagues and things like that, or clients, things like that. But the support, going back to the support program that I was part of, and it's called Wellspring, they provide that kind of support. So the support that I needed was to get in a room with other women that were going through the same process. And we were able to share. And because we each knew, although each one of us was different, we each knew that someone else was going through the cancer process, there was a level of understanding. And they were always facilitated by, say, a social worker or a therapist or something like that. And one of the interesting things that came out of this, like the feedback to them, was they would always start the meetings by saying, "Well, I've never had cancer, but." So many of the women who said, "Yes, you've never had cancer, so you don't know what we're going through, right? As best as you can, you do." But the, being in a room full of women that are going through the same journey, as you could say, as you are, is very therapeutic. And it's interesting, Joelle, because you are actually sharing with strangers. Before this happened to you, you wouldn't even recognize these people on the street. You wouldn't speak to them about anything private. But the fact that you're all sharing the same journey, it's very therapeutic.
I agree. I call it the sorority with the best members that you never wanted to join.
You never want to be part of that club.
You didn't want to be in it.
No.
So let's go back to work. You talk about a distinction between return to work and return to performance. Can you tell us a little bit about what that distinction is and how you help people work through that two-step process? Return to work, return to performance.
Yes. Okay, so in returning to work, well, let's go back to when you get the diagnosis, right? So there's a little dip in your performance at work, your performance overall, because of this diagnosis that you have. So you could take one of many paths, and I show 3 paths. So there's one where you can go into reflection, and that helps you through some rejuvenation. So if you imagine a graph, it starts to swing up a bit. And you go through this period of thriving. Now, the timing is different for everyone. Depends on how much support you have and how well you're doing with your own, I would say, emotional health. And you could come to a new level of performance. Now, I'm not talking about a new normal, because that's one of the other things that we get stuck on. Trying to return to work, return to normal, okay? Knowing that your peak performance could be, with the changes that you make in your life, can be even higher than your peak performance before is a great motivator, because you're doing what you want to do, right? So the other part is that you could take the route of questioning. So some of the questions that come up is, am I going to be able to continue doing this? And one of the things is, can I hack this anymore? Maybe not. I'm out of here, right? But then you swing into coping. And if you're an employee in particular, you then run into where your passive performance, and we've heard this about other employees as well. It doesn't matter whether it's an illness or what. Sometimes they're just passive in their performance. They're not at a peak. They're not enjoying it. They're just there. The other level that they can go to is that if they're not supported professionally, or especially if they do have an employer and the employer has no support system whatsoever for the woman, then of course she'll go into disillusionment, then all the crisis and disorganization. And she's got a real uphill battle to get to any kind of satisfaction, self-actualization. She may have a relapse, or she gets disengaged and she just checks out. So when I am coaching some women, we talk about which way it could go and to watch for certain things, like for herself, whether she is at least moving forward with either coping, or maybe she's doing really well. She's rejuvenating. She's made some hard decisions and she's going to go in a different direction, or she's going to her back to where she worked, but with a different mindset. That can happen as well. and watch for where you start to become disillusioned. And it's so easy to become disillusioned because there's so many things coming at you that I know for myself in the first couple of days, I became that toddler that was very defiant. Like, you can't do this to me. That sort of self-talk. So I coach around reframing it so that it's not back to normal. It's back to performance, a new level of peak performance, whatever that is.
Okay. And I think it's important what you said about pacing it,
Hmm.
right? Um, it takes a little time
Hmm.
to reflect, to prioritize, to find your new equilibrium.
Hmm.
And it's okay. You don't have to have all the answers because you finish treatment. That's kind of when you start asking the questions,
Yeah. Hmm.
right? Because you're not in the crazy pattern of treatment.
Hmm.
So, you talk a lot about moving beyond survival language
Hmm.
and moving into reframing as a possibility.
Hmm.
I know you have a specific offering, a program that you do. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and how it works?
Hmm. Yes, thank you for asking. It is based on emotional intelligence, on the model of emotional intelligence, because my work in emotional intelligence taught me, even before my own diagnosis, that there's certain things that happen in our life that will affect a part of our emotional intelligence. We don't stay on the same level all of our lives. So something like this, a cancer diagnosis, and I'll speak from a woman's point of view, is that it hits your self-perception pretty hard. Okay. Your self-regard very hard. Like that's all about embracing who you are, regardless of what scars you have, whatever, that sort of thing. There are going to be things that come up for you that's going to hit really hard in your self-perception, who you think you are, right? So a big part of my program and everything I write about hinges on this thing about self trust. Women, I'll speak from a woman's point of view as well, going through a long career, we're told all we need is a little more confidence. We can do anything with it, a little more confidence. So that's telling us we'll never be there because we'll always need more. So I say it's not self confidence, it's self trust. You know what you're capable of. You just need to be able to recognize that, acknowledge it for yourself, have small wins, make promises to yourself that you keep. And it's a great time to make promises to yourself and keep them. It's almost a testimonial to self-trust and trusting in your body, because many women feel that their body is letting them down. And I always say to them, think about how magical that body is. That body has been able to go through this kind of treatment. Like, recognize that, celebrate that, and build your self trust by keeping promises to yourself. So that's just a small part of the program because it goes through self perception, decision making when there are emotions involved, the stress management, um, whether you become impulsive or whether you're not impulsive enough to take chances with joy, right? It's almost like a dichotomy there, but it's going through all those areas of emotional intelligence so that you have, you mentioned it before, an equilibrium that is working for you. And some people are strong in one area, but when they're hit with a diagnosis like this, it can actually tax that area where they have to work at it a little more. And so it is a year-long program because we know you can't fix cancer in 3 months. You cannot fix your uh, emotional state in one coaching session. It is a program. So we go through the emotional intelligence and we start to see how the emotional intelligence changes with certain exercises, like certain things that women can do to acknowledge and realize that they are moving forward. So it's not the physical part, it's the emotional part. Build that resilience, or even not build the resilience, but be able to live with what you've got now.
So there's an interesting thing that I have found. I found it with members of my family and a number of the women that I have talked with, and men, which is I'm really angry that this happened.
Mm-hmm.
And if I let go of the anger, it means I'm okay that this happened. And I hang on to the anger because I'm not okay. I was too young. I was too healthy. It took away from me part of me. And a lot of this anger, which I think you have to work through. And part of what I point out to people is the cancer doesn't care if you're angry or not.
Mm-hmm.
The cancer is not a thinking being. It is cells run amok. And so you had some sort of systemic malfunction. We all have something that will be a systemic malfunction. This happened to have been one that hit you. So you're imperfect. That's something we all have to accept. But do you want to hang out angry? Because if you do, let's be angry. Let's go to a rage room. Let's really be angry. Let's go all the way. And then let's stop being angry when we're done being angry.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make your cancer any different.
No.
Just the difference of whether or not you're an angry person or not. Right? So I do believe in feeling all the emotions and letting them flow through and even pushing them to an extreme.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then kind of looking at them as, well, that's an emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And do that reframe that you talk about,
Yeah.
which is how do I find equilibrium? How do I find power in what my body was able to accomplish?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I think it's really interesting. So on that, how do you help women identify a turning point or a fulcrum that cancer can be in their lives?
That's a really tough question because it's always on your mind. Like it's always, one of the things that I find other people who haven't gone through it will say, oh, well, it's all over now. Let's get back to work, right? For the woman or anyone going through this, it's like we said before, it's the club you don't want to be a member of, but it's with you for the rest of your life. As you start, and it goes back to self-trust again, as you start to build your self-trust, and this is, I'm so adamant on this with women that, forget about the confidence part. Recognize that you are one strong woman. You've gone through an awful lot getting to where you are in your career. You have more challenges. You're able to work through those challenges. You've got what it takes to turn this around. Now, it's not a particular point where you turn it around. It's a slow progress where you start to trust your own, not so much intuition, but your own actions and say, yes, I am taking care of myself. I know that I could still be sidelined by this again, but I'm doing my best to look after myself. And part of looking after that myself is making sure that I'm doing the work that I love to do, and that if I don't want to work anymore, that's okay as well. But to have purpose, if it's not, working for a living that gives you purpose, then it's some other kind of purpose for you to live for. That can come in many different ways. It can even be for someone who's gone through cancer to be actually a support person in the cancer system. That's all, going back to what you were saying about where it could be an opportunity in disguise. Some people say, I would never have thought of doing this kind of work, but I get so much satisfaction from helping other people going through something that I went through.
I think it's very important to have purpose. And whether or not your purpose has anything to do with your cancer journey, I think finding and holding on to it is so important. Patricia, I want to do our lightning round.
Oh, lovely.
So we're going to do 5 questions.
Okay.
Quick answers. Okay?
Good.
All right, number 1. The biggest myth about returning to work after cancer is it's all over now and let's get back to work. True? False? What?
So true. I've seen it with myself and I've seen it with other people who have come back to work, and someone will say, well, it's all over now. Let's get back to work.
And it's never all over for a cancer patient. Okay, what's one thing you wish every oncologist knew about the professional challenges their patients face.
Mhm. Well, I was fortunate because I had some good professionals that recognized what the needs were for someone like myself. The radiation therapist actually said to me, "You're an executive, so we're going to get you in early in the morning for your radiation treatment." Sh- She said to me, she said, "The other people who are not working or not executives, they've got time to hang out if they have to wait for a machine." She says, "You don't." She says, "And then you can get on with your day the way, however you want to do that." So then I was able to plan my day where I had it early in the morning and then get off to clients if I wanted to.
Yeah, the power of having control over your schedule. People laugh, but I came home from my first meeting with my oncologist and my surgeon, and I created a Google Calendar called Joelle's Cancer Obliviation Project. I just put out like what was the likely timing, and I shared it with a couple people, and I said, I know it's wrong,
Hmm.
but just being able to see it and see where the endings could be and see how I could schedule my life gives me a feeling of control in a situation that's out of my control.
Definitely. Definitely.
Okay. If a businesswoman has just been diagnosed and she's really scared about what this means for her career, what's the first thing you'd tell her?
I would tell her that, first of all, that your body is magical and that it will help you get through this. But you are part of the team, definitely. And you have a voice. Very important to me that women's voices are validated and that their choices are validated and that they have a voice. So that would be the first thing I speak to them about is make sure you're in a situation where your voice is heard, that you don't just go along for the ride.
And I'd say, you're a badass. We know this because of what you do professionally. Bring that to your cancer treatment.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right. So, what's your best piece of advice for anyone who wants to kick cancer's ass?
Mm. My best advice, that book, going back to what you were saying about having a good support system, however that looks like, could be family, it could be an external support system. My GP was very, very supportive, not just with me, but with my family as well. And so I'd say it's very important to have that support system. And again, I'll go back to building your self trust, knowing that you have handled some pretty, what you say, badass things in your life, and you are equipped to address this one as well.
All right. Complete the sentence. I knew I had my verve back when.
When I realized the choice to work with women only, women business owners, they are the ones that I love to work with. My best projects have been with them. And actually I have the choice and took the choice to change my business. So I changed my business pretty drastically.
All right. Well, Patricia, I think there's so many women who are thankful you did make that
Mhm.
big change in your business. And, you're being a model of what is possible in the next era, the after treatment era. And that's very important. I think it's important because there are millions of people who live after treatment. Most people live after treatment. And so your approach and the courage to change your business to focus on what brings you joy
Mhm.
is inspirational.
Mhm.
And, I really thank you for inspiring me and for lighting a path, as well as for being this bridge where there are some interesting gaps. So, if people are interested in connecting with you or learning about your Thrive plan, how do they find you?
Okay. So that they can reach out to me by email if they like, and I'll make it really easy. It's Patricia at patriciamuir.com. So that's my last name is Muir. My website is also the same, patriciamuir.com. And on my website, you can see that I have programs on a tab. And in that tab, you will see my Thrive program for women who are experiencing cancer and their return to performance or return to work, however they want to look at it, but it's about thriving.
Absolutely is. So cancer tried to derail you. You took your lumps and then reflected, recovered, and redirected or reframed.
Yep.
Love it. And you share it with women in multiple countries. So I think you're a prime person in our Kicking Cancer's Ass sub-sorority. So I really appreciate you being on my show. If you enjoyed this episode, people, hit that subscribe button, follow, rate it, share it. And if you want to engage or support the podcast more, go over to kcapodcast.com and become a subscriber. It's the only way we support the show right now. And we get great guests like Patricia. So remember, with knowledge, with strength, with community, you can most definitely kick cancer's ass. Thank you.
Thank you.